It is time. It is time to reinvent the way we build. It is time to reinvent the way our city shapes and the way we feel in cities. But before, I want to share with you in 3 minutes a little bit about my last 15 years. I want to share with you what does it mean for me to be a comprehensivist. What does it mean to blend art, design, and architecture? I always believe that creativity and curiosity doesn't have boundaries, doesn't have disciplines. And I always wanted to investigate everything at every scale. The relationship between digital and physical, how we move and travel, the extension of our body into cars, the translation from product into spaces, the paradox of choice we have, investigation of structures and materials in different scale. First in small product, then in art installations that allow us to understand architectural scale, and then the concept of deployable architecture. Then into architectural scale, redefining luxury, understanding the difference between luxury and privacy, thinking about the future of cities and cities' utopia, designing a love story between people and nature. This is Central Park of Istanbul, rethinking structures in buildings, the relationship between a billboard and the exoskeleton of a building, rethinking an eyesore, turning an eyesore into an asset, the entrance to the Holland Tunnel in New York, and the first cruise ship terminal that is completely below sea level in construction in Istanbul. And then I turned 40. And I was thinking, something is missing. Something is missing. The well-being of humanity is directly related to the well-being of our planet. And projects and working as a design practice is limited to some of those issues. So we started what we call the Supernature Labs, reinventing construction, reinventing the way we build. Nature and cities are growing apart. Humanity, human and nature are growing apart. So let's start thinking of visions and systems that will change our future, that will create, before we actually build, what I call futuristic nostalgia. Something that we are going to want to live in before we even construct. We are facing walls wherever we are. Where every city that I go to, we are facing wall. And we are forgetting that we are part of nature. We are part of nature and we need nature. So we need to build like nature. And we need to build with nature. Nature doesn't build like that. The only reason that we are building with 90 degrees is because until very recently, we only had the capabilities and the softwares that allows us to look at plans and sections. So everything needed to be 90 degrees. But we don't need to build like that. We can start building like this. And this is how nature builds. Nature builds with a much more complex grid, and it allows us to have much more complex forms. So those are 3 very quick investigations that we are currently working on in the studios. Triangles and the power of triangles and exoskeletons, circles, and the ability to work with circular forms in construction, and of course, the hexagons, and the ability to construct like beehive and many other things in nature. So what does that mean for me building like nature? Very soon, we're going to see robots that are basically extending nature, building within nature like nature does, and using all kinds of amazing new digital fabrication and digital methods to allow us to extend from the natural terrain into the way that we construct and into the way that we're planning different cities and different parts of our urban space. So this is what I call Supernature Labs. And those are the three pillars of oneness, as I call them. They're all interconnected. As you're starting to work on cities, you're starting to realize that there is absolutely nothing that is not part of the conversation. And if something is not part of the conversation, then you're missing something very important. Harmony, belonging, and grounding. So first, what does that mean, harmony? Every city today is built with structures and infrastructures. You can say that the infrastructure is there to give, and the structures are there to take. This is not an ecosystem. There is not a symbiotic relationship. One is a giver and one is a taker, and that we need to change. This is how our world looks today, an infrastructure that basically needs to support our needs. This is just one example of ways of thinking where infrastructures and structure can start to live in harmony, and where buildings are part of giving and basically starting to have a symbiotic relationship, a diversity and exchange between different places, so we're not just facing walls, and we are part of the entire process. This is actually a project that we're working on right now in London, Ontario, Canada, where the community itself produces all the energy that it needs, and also allows for public spaces above the structure that gives ability to interact with the neighborhood in a whole different way. Second is a sense of belonging. Most buildings that we see in different places around the world have no sense of the nature that they are in. What does that mean, a sense of belonging? This is a project that we're working in Costa Rica, a house that is shaped like a mushroom in the rainforest. Mushrooms. This is a project in Buenos Aires that is basically organized similarly to the famous national waterfall. Thank you. And in Belize, the amazing relationship between coral reef and mangrove. Basically houses that are shaped with a structure like mangrove and cladding similar to coral reef. Exploring nature in a new way, allowing us to interact with nature in a way that we've never interacted before. Grounding. We're familiar with that term in electricity and as parents, I guess. But I'm talking about the relationship between us, human, and the electricity of the earth. What we receive from the soil underneath us when we are able to actually put our feet on the ground. When we worked on this project, this was our very first architectural project in the UAE. And when it was constructed, we realized the amazing power of basically being surrounded by nature and nurturing the soil and allowing for nature to be all around us. So later on, we started working on systems that can do that in buildings. How can we turn concrete and asphalt that typically are trying to close the surface, but actually making the surface porous, allowing us to bring soil into our environment, and not just understanding the power of grounding within an apartment building, but also the tremendous value that we can get from having soil as a sound barrier, as a carbon sink, as an amazing way, of course, to grow vegetation that we want to live with and use. The building cells allows us to look at building and how we interact with building, not just around them, but on top of them. And the amazing strength of those cells, those beehives, is that we can actually put soil in between each one of those surfaces, which again gives us tremendous benefits of sound insulation and vegetation. So the ecosystem of every scale, the symbiotic relationship, when we feel that we're living in buildings that are not selfish, we are less selfish ourselves. The sense of belonging, designing for the particular climate that we're in, designing for the particular environment that we're in, and making sure that we can be grounded no matter the floor that we are living in. So this is what we call creating earth-based cities. Let's assist nature in designing the future. We're always thinking of master plan as a top-down solution, a master that planned an area. But if we actually humble ourselves a little bit and assisting nature and asking nature how he wants a space to be designed, we are going to look at cities slightly different. So this is what I call the futuristic nostalgia. Let's together create a future that we want to live in. Thank you very much.